Alright, so this is Game Master again, aka True Old GM. So today we're going to talk about the sneak or the stealth skill, whatever you want to call it. So if this is your first video of mine you're checking out because you just saw sneak stealth skill and you want to know how to do that, basically you're going to want to go definitely back and watch my first video, the introduction, and about 6 minutes in it starts the review of the distance formula and how that's done in RPG Maker, if you remember the Pythagorean theorem and how you figure that out on a coordinate plane. You're going to need to know how to do that, and it's too long to go over it here, so go back and see that. Also, my third video is about opposing skill rolls. That'll probably be useful. My second video might be good to show you with the character generation how I come up with some of these skills and parameters, but you won't need that. The first video, definitely 6 minutes into it. The third video, good idea, and yes, go from there. And also, if you're just now joining me, this little guy, this kind of creepy looking dude, is a default character that starts off as transparent in the regular game and gets switched to a normal character when the character chooses it. So he's just like blah, so don't worry about how he looks kind of weird and creepy. And then right here is my event that sets his parameters for sneak and sets his transparency off, blah blah blah. This event, these two events are the same thing, but basically they turn the enemy 1 switch on. What enemy 1 does, I'm looking for some input on this if anybody has it. So let me show you if you looked at some of my other videos, the skill oppositions, you notice that they're all based upon like the enemy parameters, which are set like here. It sets the enemy parameters, but you notice it's the same variable. The only and the reason that is because if you look in here, control variables, I mean, just for so the character creation has maybe about up to 25 to 30, but I mean, we're getting up to like 80 variables just to do one, just to do the exchanges between the player and one event. And at least half of those are the event. So if you want to do separate variables for each event, like each guard, monster, whatever, you can do that absolutely and have that in there. I might say I don't know, maybe do the same thing, have like an area switch where it sets all the switches for like maybe 5 monsters in the area or something. But this was my way of doing it to really save time on scripting, is basically he steps over this thing and it sets off switch 1, which sets the events parameter to this person right here. It does it when enemy 1 is switched on, and it sets all these into motion. And then this right here, when they step on it, if in case he manages to sneak by, turns off the enemy 1 and turns on enemy 2. So it basically sets it to this person, which has all the same parameters, but it basically makes it so this is the one that's looking for him now and walking around. I have this right here, so if the player steps on it, it makes a breaking glass sound, and it adds in the sneak skill to the perception check for the enemy. It makes it so it's very easy for him to catch. Here's an interesting thing I did. So shift button normally makes you run, but if you press the shift button down and press the OK button down, then it times as the sneak by 4, basically makes it harder for you to be caught. Turns a switch on, and I'll show you what that does, and then it makes the player move slower. So it's a sneak skill, sneak ability, and then when the sneak switch is on, it goes to this one, and if the shift and the OK button are pressed down, nothing happens. But if the OK button isn't pressed down or the shift button isn't pressed down, you notice you have 2 else parameters. It basically divides the sneak by 4, so it's back to normal, and then sets the speed to normal and turns sneak off. So this is what you're going to want to use if you want to make them go slower, so to speak, is something like this. Let me show you just so you can like maybe pause this and then this. There is a plugin that allows you to use a lot more buttons to do things. I'm just not sure how that switches over to like iOS, which is probably the main platform for these things. Like if you actually wanted to like sell your game, because people that are buying PC games are like buying like, you know, Fallout and, you know, Call of Duty, stuff like that. I'm not sure there's much of a market for 8-bit in computer games. I could be wrong though. So let's see. And then this thing. So this is basically an event for what I did. It's kind of complicated. So not really though. So if the player is behind this X coordinate, so remember this is 0. If it's behind 2 and it's above this one, the Y coordinate is above 10 or below 10, or reverse those. It basically, as long as he's not on this line right here and behind this thing, then it multiplies his sneak skill by 16. The reason is because he's basically behind a wall. So she shouldn't be able to detect him if he's behind a wall. Unless I have like a noise thing here. I made the noise in this the event for this person searching. Basically, if the noise switch is on, it multiplies the perception skill by 64 to take into account that he may be sneaking to multiply by 4, maybe hiding behind this thing, as well as maybe facing away, which I'll show you, multiplies it by, or divides perception by 4 as well. So, and then this one, if he gets over here, and going back to this, but then switches the A on, and if it's on, and then the player steps over here, it divides sneak by 16 and switches this back here. So basically, he can go back and forth, and have the sneak. So once again, just show you so you can pause, and right there. So, if he goes here, then he'll be more detectable, but if he hides back here, he'll be less detectable. I'm not sure, so this is a different screen than you've seen before in the last one. The last one was like a fort that was going to be the tutorial. This was the screen I was messing around on when I was coming up with this sneak skill. And this used to be like a castle thing, but I wanted to change it to the Western theme, and I didn't want to go with the guards because, the Union soldiers again, because I just wanted to go something different. So I made this a saloon, and the guards, so to speak, are saloon girls, and I don't know, I guess my backstory is this guy wants to go here and get a drink, and he doesn't want to blow his money on working women, so he's sneaking past them. And then this event right here is also to hide behind this piano. So basically what the short of this is as long as he's within this area right here, because these are walls, so if he's within these 6 squares, then his sneak skill is times 16. If he goes outside of those 6 squares, then it goes back to normal and switches back to this. And then these are just events, like if he touches the bar or whatever, he's like, hey, you made it, and that's the end of it. All right, so let me show you how this works before we go into the details. So normal running, sneaking, hide, because she's going to look. She's like, where's my person that's paying? And I'm like, oh, shoot. But keep in mind, this is still random rolls, so it could... See, there she caught him. Because she was looking away and she was far enough away, it didn't detect him. And like I said, keep in mind, this is still random rolls. So I've had it where I've been here sneaking, and she was right here and still found me. The odds are way off. And, sometimes things happen that are frustrating, but that's what happens with random rolls. And she's like, hooray, I found someone to pay me for work. So that's what happens when I step on that. All right. So now let's go through this. Yada, yada, yada. Hiding. Don't want your services right now. I want to go get drunk at the bar. Yeehaw. So now he can walk a little bit. Got to be careful because this lady's looking for some too. He's like, oh, I'm going to hide. She's not going to see me. All right, take off. He's like, yeah, boy. And he's talking to the barkeep, and he's like, you made it. All right. So that is the event in action. Now let's see the cogs and wheels of it. So you've seen all that. So All right. I have my common event for finding the distance. You find the map of player X, you find the map of the Y of player X, or the X coordinate of the player, the Y coordinate of the player, the X coordinate of the event, the Y coordinate of the event. The distance, which is, so that's all there. Basically, like I said, I wasn't going to review this. So this finds the distance of Y and X, and then I probably should add, so then you go into the search event, and then it takes the two distances, the X and the Y, and it adds them together to make that polar distance. I probably should put this in the distance, what is this thing called? Common event. So I'll probably do that later. So then as I said, this basically, as we talked about in the last video, there's the enemy awareness versus the event awareness, and that just allows, the event awareness keeps it in play, is right here in this event, and this allows me to making it to go to a different variable allows me to mess with it within. So basically, once it figures that out, then figures out the distance and then adds those together. And I've made it so that if the polar distance, if you remember, the polar distance is, like it takes into account that this distance is, like, for example, this one away is a different distance than this. This is about 1.5 or 2 polar distance, and this is 1 or 1 polar distance. Once again, watch the first video. So if the polar distance is less than 9, meaning she's less than 3 squares away, then the perception skill is going to be multiplied by 4 because you're within distance to hear her breathe. However, if the polar distance is greater than 36, meaning greater than 6 squares away, it's divided by 4 because at that point you're getting kind of far away. And if it's greater than 81 or greater than 8 squares away, it's divided by 16. So she's just way too far away. That's basically this, I think, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11. So from here to here is, how far away she'd have to be that, I don't know what the word is, handicapped. That's not the right word, but that's the only one I think of. And okay, then this is what I also did. So if the player's X coordinate, and remember, this is the positive Y direction, this is the origin, this is positive Y, this is positive X. But if the player's X coordinate is less than the event, so let's say the player is right here, or let's say right here next to the wall, and the event is right here. So it's to the left, is facing right. So it's basically facing away from where the player is. It then once again divides the too much because she was facing away and she was probably greater than 6 squares away. So that's divided by 16 right there. That adds on. And then this is, if basically the player's over here and she's over here and turned left, that's divided by 4. So anytime she's facing away from the player, the perception is divided by 4. I originally had it so she was facing directly in the line of fire. So if they're on the same line, that it would multiply her perception. That ended up just, I don't know, being useless, but you could decide to do that. Basically, these are just suggestions. Play with it however you want. I'm not the dictator of you. This is just to give you ideas of how you can go about doing it. Here's my thing. If the sound switch is on, you step on that glass, it times the enemy perception by 64. Because what I wanted to do is basically, if she's facing away, that's 4. If he's sneaking, that's 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. And then 16 times another 4 is 64. So I basically wanted to make it be able to cancel out if she's close by, but facing away and he's sneaking, and then giving her a little extra. And then once that happens, it turns the sound switch off again so you can still step on stuff. And then once it calculates the enemy's perception using all these different things that could happen, then it goes to the opposing skill rolls. It takes the random number times, this is where you're going to want to go back and watch that last video, because I'm not going to explain all this again, but the random number times the perception, and this short run comes up with a number between, and divided by 100 comes up with a number between 1 and whatever the enemy's perception is, 1 to 20, 1 to 30, blah, 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 and does the and then times it by its parameter, and then it's the same for the character's sneak skill. And if the enemy's random variable is greater than the character's random variable, it turns a switch found on. If not, it does nothing and it waits 30 frames. Yeah. So once the switch, so I guess I'm just going to go up through this and sort of scroll very, very slowly so that you can pause it and look at it again. But once again, just takes the distance and takes into account direction and distance from the player and adjusts the perception accordingly if the player was stupid and stepped on some stuff, and then does a random encounter. And then it does the found switch. So this is a closer look at this person. So she starts off as, just doing this custom route I make where she goes up and down, turns right to look around, and she does that just from the start. And then once the enemy one switches on, it gives the parameters. And you can do this, for anything. Like maybe once they're found, it doesn't mean anything, but you can still talk to them. So this will set all the parameters you need for the enemy. These are all parallel, by the way, and then it'll switch the A to on. So then once it's there, then if enemy one, and so you have to make sure to include this, because so once this A switched on and it has all that parameters, if enemy one switches on, then it'll continually run that search. It'll go through it and it'll wait about 30 frames. I think I said 30 frames. Make sure you put a wait period in there, because if you don't, it's constantly running that. And when you do that, the law of averages, basically it's going to make it much, much easier for the event to locate the player, because once again, it's random rolls. So it's just constantly going through that. So make sure there's a wait period to make it so that, it's not like, you're going to get caught, basically. And, if enemy switch is not on, like basically if he goes and gets here, what that does is I switch the self switch A to off. So then it goes back to, and then the enemy one won't be off. So it'll go back to like here and start all over again. And once I think you can put another thing here basically or change this around where if something happens, it'll switch this enemy one back on. So you can go back and forth. So this is to show you how, once again, parameters set the self switch to on. If enemy one is on, you have the search event running, and if it's not on, it switches it back to A, and since the enemy one won't be on, it goes back to the start, and it can start all over again. If enemy one, and this is important too, make sure that this is the first thing you put in the switch, because you don't want to make it so that if this person finds the character, that this person doesn't do this. So if the enemy one switch is on and the found switch is on, then you can at this point do whatever you want to do with this character. Maybe you'll just be like, and faint and pass out. I don't know. But for a monster, basically I make the movement go to approach, so she runs after the character and makes her go faster, and then it is basically keeps finding the distance, the polar distances again, and if that polar distance is less than 1 or equal to 1, meaning she's basically touching the character, then it sets the movement. Well, I guess it wasn't really, but it's supposed to. But basically, she's like, "Oh, you looking for a good time, cowboy?" And then what I'd show you is once you get back, the screen fades out and fades back in, so it's supposed to give you the impression that illicit thing happening here. In fact, let me go do that, just because it'll be fun. It won't take long. So he's like, "Nope, not gonna get me, ladies. I'm gonna take my money to the bar, and not for you." Yada yada yada. She's like, "Ooh, looking for a good time, cowboy?" And he's like, "I spent my money on her." And he's like, "Loo loo 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 loo." See, this is where the random rolls come in. You see, I was like right next to her, and she didn't see me for a while. It can get kind of weird. But like I said, so that's the ups and downs of random rolls. Is it works out most of the time? Sometimes those odd things happen. So, anyways, then it's like, yoo-hoo, looking for a good time, cowboy. And I didn't set that same thing for her. Oh, yep. I don't know why that's not working. So either way, then once basically it says that the screen fades out, sets the self switch B, fades back in the screen, and then basically I have it so that once that if this person finds, so maybe you make it a monster and you decide, if you don't want to have the on-screen battle, what's cool is basically if the polar distance is 1, you can do the scene control and do a battle process. So they runs up, and as soon as it touches, it goes into a battle. That's one option if you don't want to do the on-screen battle. I think that's a pretty cool option too. So that way you don't have to program the on-screen battle thing. But basically, once that happens, whatever happens here, make sure you turn the found to off. So that way, this person can, start over and you can do this. Why didn't that work? I don't know. I'll have to look at that. Anyways, but you get the point here. So that's basically the ins and outs of the sneak skill. Or the stealth skill. Let me know what you think, what you would do differently. Like I said, this is a basic skeleton structure. It took me so long to do this and work out the bugs. And as you can see, I still have a bug there that I didn't work out. Let me know if you think it's good. Let me say, you know what, this was a good idea, but this is what could do better. I'd like to get a dialogue started on this. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much.